Hi everybody, my name is Andrew. In this lesson I'm going to talk about using the past perfect tense. I'm also going to talk about using the past perfect progressive or past perfect continuous tense. Let's get started. Okay, first let's take a look at the past perfect. How to make the past perfect. This is a very quick introduction to making a past perfect statement. So when we make past perfect, we use had for positive statements or had not for negative statements. Then we add the past participle form of a verb. So we'll use this in a few example sentences. So we use the past perfect tense in a few different situations. The first two, I feel, are probably some of the more common ways to use them. Let's look here first. We use past perfect tense 1 to show a past action that happened before another past action. So, to kind of visualize this, I want to look at this part right here on my timeline. I have a timeline that goes from the past here to the present now and up to the future. So here in this part, I want to look here for this number 1 of past perfect. When we want to express that two things happened in the past, one action happened before another action, we can use the past perfect tense to show the action that happened further in the past, and simple past tense to show the action that started more recently, or that happened more recently, rather. So let's look at an example. He hadn't contacted me for weeks. Then suddenly he invited me for coffee. So here we see hadn't contacted. This is negative form of the past perfect tense. Hadn't is the contracted form of hadn't. Contacted is my past participle verb. He hadn't contacted me for weeks. So this is my past perfect situation. So this is the first point. Hadn't contacted me for weeks. This is the situation. Then suddenly he invited me. So this is a simple past tense comment. He invited me for coffee. So my simple past thing happened next. So we can show this progression of actions here. In some cases, when it's very clear, like if the writer of the speaker uses before or after, we don't always need to be so strict with using past perfect and simple past tense, but sometimes, especially when writing stories, this is very useful for showing the order of actions in sentences. Okay, so let's continue to the second point with past perfect tense. We use past perfect to express something that started in the past and continued to another point in the past. So to kind of imagine this, let's look at this part of the timeline here. So again, we are in the past, we have something that started in the past and continued, but also it ended in the past as well. So it doesn't continue to the present, which would be the present perfect tense, but it continued to a point in the past and stopped there. So an example sentence with this. When I got my current job, I had lived in New York for 4 years. So here we see again had lived is our past perfect tense. In this case, I'm using the positive form. Had and lived. I had lived in New York for 4 years. So this is my continuing action. The things that began in the past and continue to a point in the past. So I have again simple past tense here. When I got my current job, this part shows us where this action kind of stops. So when I got my current job, I had lived in New York for 4 years. So this point on the timeline where the speaker began living in New York, the point in time, the speaker in New York lived in New York and the person got the job. Nothing in this case, it doesn't mean that the speaker stopped living in New York. We don't know, but the speaker wants to say at this point in time. So even though the action doesn't always stop, it's like there's some kind of key point, some information here that we want to note. So this is an example of that. So a continuing action and then a key point in the past maybe stops the action or that we just want like kind of mark some importance for us. Okay, so finally let's move to the third point for using past perfect. We use past perfect to talk about unreal situations in the past. You might see this used with these things like would have, could have, and should have. So an example of this, I would have helped you plan the surprise party if I had known about it. If I had known about it. This use of the past perfect tense shows us the speaker didn't know about it in the past. So this is an unreal situations. If I had to visualize this again via in the past, here's something I've used a dotted line here to show it's not real. So there is something back here in the past that didn't happen, but that we want to reference now. We want to talk about it now. So if in the past I had known, so I didn't know, but if I had known, I would have helped you plan. So this is unreal situation. We can use past perfect for all of this. So let's compare this 10 then to the progressive or the continuous use of past perfect. When we make the progressive or continuous form, we use had, yes, and had not. In the negative, then we add been plus the progressive form of a verb. So we use this one to show actions that continue in the past until a point in the past. So yes, this is very similar to this past perfect use that I talked about, but we often use this to express like an interrupted action, an action that was stopped by another action. So this means, for example, in this example sentence, I had been studying for an hour when my mom got home. So this is an interrupted action, or there's some of change in this situation. Everything happens in the past. So here, had been studying is my past perfect progressive tense. This is the continuing action on my timeline here. It's in blue my continuing action in the past. I had been studying for an hour, so this action continued for an hour, was continuing for an hour. Then the sentence says when my mom got home. So when here marks the point where the action changes or the situation changes or is interrupted. So here I marked in red with this X is the interruption when my mom got home. We used simple past tense to describe the interruption action, the thing that stopped or changed the continuing action. So I had been studying for an hour, past perfect progressive, when my mom got home, simple past tense. So we use this to talk about actions that were interrupted in the past. We can also use this is kind of like 1.5 number 1.5 or 2 guess for today. We can also use this to talk just about actions that didn't necessarily change or get interrupted, but we want to talk about something that was continuing. And then we kind of, from the context, from the conversation, we understand when it stopped. So a great example of this is a sentence like this. We were exhausted because we've been working all night. So here you can see there is not really a change. Like there is not really a point where there is an interruption or something stops or something new happens. In this case, we are just kind of making two past tense statements, similar to what I talked about in point on over here. But we want to emphasize a continuing action. So here I have past tense. We were exhausted. We were exhausted. Exhausted means very tired. We were exhausted because we, this part, please be careful, a good note here. We had, we were exhausted because we been working all night. So this working action had continued all night long. We want to emphasize that. And then after that, we were exhausted. But there's not change. It's like the speaker is telling a story. Maybe so we were exhausted because we have been working all night. When we got home, we found out we didn't have our case. So you might see a sentence like this in a story. So it's not, I say at a specific point where a change occurs, but we kind of understand from the story or from the situation what's happening. So you will see this continuous or the progressive form used quite commonly in these kinds of situations. So this is a quick introduction to using the past perfect tense and the past perfect progressive tense. I hope that this helps you understand these two grammar points. If you have any questions or comments or want to practice making some sentences with this grammar, please feel free to do so in this comment section of this video, of course. If you like the video, don't forget to give a thumbs up.